When people think about the types of systems that are in their home, they usually think about all the big stuff: roof, foundation, framing, walls, HVAC, electrical, all that stuff. But what they don't usually think about is all the little finishes, the finish work, and the safety features that really can make a house a home. So, in today's video, this is part 9 of my 9-part home systems explainer series. We're going to talk about the finishes and safety devices that you can find in your home. Now, if you're looking for a general overview for the other 8 systems, you can find that in the playlist below. Or if you're looking to deep dive into each one of those individual systems, there's also a link in the description below where you can find deep dives into each one of those individual systems. So let's go ahead and jump right in and start with safety devices. Safety devices are one of those things that seem kind of trivial when you don't have an emergency going on, but really they are going to be lifesavers in the long term, particularly if you have some kind of real life-threatening emergency in your home. When we talk about safety devices, I usually like to break these up into 3 separate categories, and those are fire protection and fire safety, electrical protection and electrical safety, and then physical or mechanical safety interlocks. So let's start with the fire protection one, since fire is probably one of the more scary things that you will ever experience. So, one of the best ways to protect yourself against a fire in your home is to be able to detect it early. Now, an early detection mechanism is going to be, just like you would think, a smoke detector in your home. Now, smoke detectors, in accordance with the residential building code, they have to have at least one smoke detector on every level of the home. You need to have one in each bedroom, and then you need to have one outside of any sleeping areas. So, usually, this is going to be on the ceiling in the hallway that's outside of the bedrooms. Now, what's not required is to have one in the kitchen, but a lot of people put them there anyways because that's one of the places in your house where you would most likely have a fire, right? If you're cooking something up, you have a grease fire. So that's going to give you an early warning. But technically, a smoke detector in the kitchen is not required. One of the other safety devices that kind of works in concert with a smoke detector is a carbon monoxide detector. Now, sometimes people have these as separate detectors in their home, but nowadays you can get a combination smoke and carbon monoxide detector for, pretty much the same price as a regular smoke detector. So a lot of smoke detectors in newer homes are going to be hardwired into the electrical system because that's required per the new code. But if you have an older home, you can also just take a smoke detector that you get from the store that's battery operated and mount it on the wall or on the ceiling or wherever it's required to be per the code. So now that we know that we have a fire because we have a smoke and a carbon monoxide detector, the second most important thing about fire safety devices is to be able to put out the fire if you actually have one. So that leads me to the second device that's important, which is a fire extinguisher. Now, fire extinguisher, a lot of people think that these have to be these huge industrial things that you see like behind a, in emergency, break this glass type of scenario. But really, you can get a cheap fire extinguisher for less than 25 bucks on Amazon or at your local hardware store. And this is really going to be a lifesaver for you. Now, the important thing with the fire extinguisher is that number one, you have to actually have one. Number two, you need to know where it is. So a lot of people will keep these in their garage or maybe under their sink. But number three, and this is the most important one, is you got to know how to use it. So anytime you're getting a fire extinguisher, please make sure you're reading the label, make sure you understand how to use it. And if it's worth your time and you have a little bit of extra money, get a second fire extinguisher and practice, right? Because it does take some practice to be able to effectively fight a fire. Trust me, I know. I was in the Navy, lots of firefighting experience. Take my word for it. Now that we've covered the fire safety side of things, let's talk about our next category of safety devices, which is electrical safety. Now, there's going to be 2 major types of electrical safety devices, maybe 3. We'll call them 3. There's 3 major types of electrical safety devices. The first one is going to be located in your main breaker panel, and that's the breaker itself, right? So each major electrical load in your house is going to have an individual breaker inside your main electrical panel. And in those breakers is an overcurrent mechanism, which is going to trip if it sees a large power surge. So that's our first type of electrical safety device. The second type of electrical safety device is also a type of breaker, but it's a specific type, and it's called an AFCI breaker. That stands for Arc Fault Current Interrupt Breaker. Now, this breaker is going to be a newer style breaker that was developed in the last 10, 15 years. And these are required on all new residential homes, but a lot of times you won't see them on older homes. Now, the way an AFCI breaker works, very similar to a normal breaker, it just monitors for an abnormal current surge, and it does this through circuitry that's a little bit more complex that's actually in the breaker itself. Now, the last type of electrical safety device you're going to see is a GFCI outlet, which is a ground fault circuit interrupt outlet. Now, these are required to be in any wet or damp areas. So think like your kitchen, your bathrooms, or Any outdoor outlets, those are all required to be GFCI outlets now. Now, the benefit of a GFCI outlet is, again, it's going to monitor for a large current surge, meaning there's something that's grounded, or maybe there's some water that got in the outlet. And what it's going to do is it's going to trip or turn off whatever the electrical appliance is that's plugged into that outlet so that it doesn't cause an electrical shock to whoever's using it. So, super important. Make sure that all of your outlets in the wet or damp areas of your home are GFCI. Now, another important note here, not all GFCI outlets are made for wet or damp locations, which seems kind of silly, but make sure you're checking the label on the outlet itself as well as on the box whenever you buy one. So now that we've talked about fire safety and electrical safety, next we're going to talk about our last category of safety items, which is physical and mechanical safety and interlocks. So things that are going to fall into this category are simple things you probably wouldn't even think about, like guardrails or handrails on any stairs, or a guardrail on a balcony of some kind, right? So these types of things are going to physically prevent you from falling off of the balcony or falling off of a patio or down the stairs. And these things are super helpful, particularly for those of us who have maybe a little bit less mobility, like some elderly folks or people who have suffered a physical injury in the past. Now, the other type of physical safety device, and again, this is probably common sense, but these are going to be the locks and the deadbolts on your doors themselves. So a good deadbolt is not going to be very expensive, probably 20 or 30 bucks if you get a really nice one at your local hardware store. But the important thing about those deadbolts is that a deadbolt is not a surefire way to stop someone from getting into your house. It's mostly a deterrent. Now, there are ways to improve the physical safety of a deadbolt, and one of those includes using extra long wood screws that actually go all the way into or through the door jamb and into the stud that's right next to the door. And that's going to make it a lot more difficult for someone to break into your home. All right. So now that we've covered all of our safety devices, because safety first, after all, let's talk about the fun part of a house, which is all the finishes, the finish work, the floors, the paint, the trim work, the cabinets, the vanities, all the fun stuff. So for each of the parts of the finish work of the house that I'm going to cover, I'm going to start with the least expensive portions and then move our way into the more expensive versions. So you know what things you can upgrade on the cheap that'll still make a nice impact on your home, and you know what things might be better to wait until a larger renovation. So the first thing that falls into finish work category is your outlet covers, your light switches, and your light cover switches. Now, there's nothing that yells and screams outdated home or maybe even deferred maintenance like walking into a house and seeing old tan or ivory colored light switches and faceplates on all the outlets. Now, this is a super easy upgrade. The outlet itself is going to cost maybe $5, probably less than that. And then on top of that, the faceplate cover is going to be like 25 cents. So these things are super easy to swap out. If you put a nice white light switch outlet and switch or outlet cover on, it's really going to step up the quality of the home, and it's a super cheap upgrade. Now, that being said, anytime you're doing electrical work, please make sure you know what you're doing or you're hiring a qualified contractor, because as much as it would be nice to have a nice new upgraded outlet, less fun if you end up shocking yourself while you're doing it. On the note of electrical outlet upgrades and light switch upgrades, there's two quick pro tips that I want to give you that add a little touch of luxury and are not that expensive to implement. The first one is having outlets with USB plugs in them, which is a super nice touch, particularly nowadays when everything is powered by or chargeable with a USB outlet. So if you add these to common areas in the home, like maybe one on the kitchen counter or in the living room where people are using their devices a lot, very nice upgrade. Now, the second one is to add dimmers on your light switch. Now, these don't have to be the dimmers that you remember seeing in like your grandma's house, like those huge, big circular dimmers that you have to roll up and down to get the light to change. Nowadays, there's super slim dimmer switches that are almost not even noticeable until you're right up close to the light switch. So these are a nice little upgrade that will add just a touch of luxury, and again, not very expensive. We're talking in the range of 5 to 10 to 15 bucks for a nice set of dimmers or USB outlets. So after our outlets, switches, and outlet and switch covers, the next cheapest thing you can upgrade that'll still add a nice touch and that falls into the finish work category is hardware. Now, hardware covers a wide variety of things, all the way from cabinet drawer pulls to cabinet handles to shower heads to kitchen sink faucets to vanity faucets, right? The list goes on and on. But mostly the hardware is going to be something that's made out of metal. that is nice and shiny and it really adds a little pop of color and class to your house. If you're looking for a quick way to modernize the space that you're living in, try swapping out your kitchen sink faucet or maybe upgrading the handles on your cabinets in your kitchen. Make a super big impact, and it's really not very expensive. You can go on Amazon, get a pack of brand new cabinet handles for like 10 or 15 bucks. Not super difficult to install, particularly if you already have handles on your cabinets, because you can just use the pre drill holes from the previous ones. Now, other nice touches are going to be to have a rain style shower head, or maybe even a shower head that offers a couple different options, maybe even having a shower head that has a selectable nozzle on it. So, hardware, again, great way to upgrade your space and to give it a nice, clean, modern look. Now, when it comes to color selections, there's a couple of fads that are rolling around right now. One of the ones that I like that I think it looks super clean is white walls, paint, whatever it may be, with black hardware. And personally, I like the lever door handles, although some people like the knobs. I just think the modern look of the lever handles is a little bit nicer touch. But one of the other fads that's going around is blues or greens on the paint color on cabinets, for example, with gold finishes on the either the cabinet pulls or the cabinet handles or even the faucet being gold. So again, these are things that are going to come and go with time. The whole millennial gray thing is kind of on its way out, and people are looking more for custom colors. So keep that in mind. But one of the best ways to create a nice cohesive look is to have good paint colors, colors that accent each other, and then to have really nice, cohesive, similar finishes on all the hardware throughout the home. So that actually brings us into the next category of finish work, which is the trim and the paint. Now, paint is its whole own separate video and its own separate category. I mean, there is more to know about paint than you ever would really care to know. But the big overview on paint here is that you want to choose nice neutral colors, because anything that's super bold is going to be seen by a potential buyer as something that is highly personable and personalized. And if you've ever tried painting over like a super loud red or orange color, you know that it takes a bunch of coats of paint and you can still kind of see it like underneath whatever color you choose. So if you're getting ready to resell your house, I always recommend neutral colors. It doesn't have to be the whole millennial gray thing, but maybe like an eggshell or a nice kind of cream color, just something that's going to brighten up the space. Now, as far as the type of paint goes, there's all types of different finishes and paints. But what I like to use is on the walls in general, I like to use a matte paint, not a flat, but a matte paint, because if you need to go back and reapply that paint later, to like to clean up some drywall mess, it's going to blend really easily. On the other hand, if you use something like an eggshell, it has some acrylic in there. And as you use the paint in the bucket, you're going to use up some of the acrylic, but it's not going to be at the same rate. So what's going to happen is if you have to go back and paint over some smaller areas, you're going to be able to see those areas where you painted over with the old acrylic paint. And we call that flashing. So you're going to be able to see the flashes of paint. And it's kind of hard to describe, but you'll know it when you see it. If you walk in and you see what looks like kind of random shiny paint spots on the wall. So in general, on the walls, we like a matte paint, something with minimal acrylic in it. Now, as far as the trim goes, which is, well, trim falls into there's a whole bunch of things that fall into the trim category. But as far as trim goes, I like to use either a satin or a gloss paint. That's definitely gonna be a lot more expensive, but the great thing about a satin or a gloss paint is that you can scrub the crap out of it when you need to get it nice and clean, and it's gonna look brand new. So now that we've talked about paint, let's talk about trim work. So trim work is gonna be everything from crown molding to the baseboards to the shoe molding that goes around your baseboards if you put in new floors, a chair rail, wainscoting, right? There's so many different things that qualify as trim work. And the nice thing about these is that trim work is usually not that expensive to do yourself, and it's not that difficult either. So you can really level up your space by putting in some crown molding, for example, or maybe putting some nice casement around your windows, or even adding some wainscoting or like a chair rail. It's really going to upgrade your space and it's going to be super cheap. Now, as far as trim goes, usually you can find those in one of two materials. The first material is real wood, which is nice because it's very firm, it's long lasting, it doesn't absorb water very well, and this sounds kind of weird, but if you put it on the wall, for example, it's not going to sag over time, right? So if you're putting a nail every foot or so into your trim work, if you are using something called MDF, sometimes that MDF can sag if you're not using glue. So that brings me to the other material that you use or that's commonly found in trim, which is MDF. Now, MDF stands for medium density fiber. It's basically almost like a wood paste that they then press together and make this. It's kind of like wood. It feels like wood. It looks like wood, but it's a lot more flexible and a lot softer. Now, the benefit of MDF is that it's way cheaper, but the downside is that that stuff sucks up water like a sponge. So if you're going to put trim or shoe molding around areas that are going to be wet, like maybe an exterior door or in your bathroom, I would definitely recommend using real wood trim instead of MDF, because any water that gets on that MDF stuff, it's going to soak up like crazy, and then it's going to expand and it's just going to look kind of crappy, and you're going to get some water damage over time. All right, so our next category of finish work is one of my favorites, and it's one of the things that helps your house sell way faster and for way more money than many other upgrades. And we're talking about countertops and cabinets. Now, countertops and cabinets, obviously, these can be found in the kitchen, but this discussion also extends to the bathroom, where you're going to have countertops and cabinets, which usually you can buy those in combination in the form of a vanity, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. So, cabinets. When it comes to cabinets, there are lots of different options, but I would say for anything, for any home that's going to be priced under about $800,000, you can use just a simple white shaker cabinet with soft closed doors, and that's going to work absolutely wonderfully for you. Now, the shaker cabinets, you recognize these if you see them. They have kind of the nice clean look, the clean lines. People love that stuff nowadays. And even if you don't want to upgrade all of your cabinets, you can buy those soft close hinges for pretty cheap and then install them yourself. So you still get that nice luxury feel of the soft close hinges and the soft close doors without having to break your budget. Now, the thing that's going around nowadays is to have two-tone cabinets. So, for example, white cabinet uppers, that are along the walls, and then maybe light green or light blue or deep navy blue cabinet bases. And this is again going to be kind of a personal preference. But anytime you're getting cabinets, I would recommend going through a reputable supplier, not getting the cheap stuff off the shelf in Home Depot or Lowe's, because there's definitely going to be a much higher quality that's available for not much more price if you go through someone directly. Now, on the same vein as cabinets, we have vanities, which are kind of like a standalone cabinet that's going to be found in a bathroom or a bathing area. Now, for both cabinets and vanities, one surefire way to have a nice little luxury touch is to get elevated height cabinets and vanities. This is just going to be really helpful for tall people like myself. So we're not having to bend over quite as far when we're cooking breakfast or dinner. And it's just really nice to have that nice elevated top. This gives it a nice luxury feel. Now, as far as the countertops go, that's our next portion of this discussion. Countertops are one of the best ways to level up your house. Unfortunately, they are not the cheapest way to do it. If it is time to upgrade your kitchen or your bathrooms and you're looking for some custom countertops, I will always recommend getting rid of those crappy vinyl countertops and going with a nice stone. Now, there are different types of stone countertops, and each one has their pros and cons. I'll run through a quick list of them here, but check out another video on my channel where I'm going to do a detailed breakdown of each one. So the classic stone countertop that's been put in homes for years is granite. Granite is great because it's a natural stone. It's super hard, super durable. You can get it in all sorts of colors and patterns, which is nice. And on top of all that, it's pretty affordable to boot. Now, the downside of granite, because it's a natural stone, it is porous. So you have to seal it every once in a while, do some maintenance on it so you can make sure that you're not going to stain the countertops if you spill anything like red wine or gravy or whatever may be on it. Now, a new option that's been really popular nowadays is quartz. So quartz is going to be a little bit more expensive, so probably 2 out of 5 stars on the expense rating. But the nice thing about quartz is that it's a man-made material. It's an engineered stone. So the benefit of that is that it's super hard. It's a non-porous surface. You never have to worry about it staining or resealing your quartz countertops. Super nice benefit of that. The other benefit is because it's an engineered or man-made stone, you can get it in every color, pattern, combination you could possibly think of, right? Because we make it ourselves. So really it's just going to depend on what manufacturer or countertop supplier you go with, but most are going to have tons and tons of options for quartz countertops. As far as quartz countertops go, there's not really many downsides. Maybe the price if you're looking for a super unique stone pattern or color. But other than that, quartz, great way to go, super clean look, and very popular nowadays. Now, the next level up from quartz, right? So granite's gonna be the cheapest, then quartz is something called quartzite. Now, quartzite, while it sounds super similar to quartz, is also a natural stone like granite, which means that you do have to seal it and do some maintenance on it over time to make sure it doesn't stain. Now, the nice thing about quartzite is that it is extremely durable, extremely hard, and because of that, it'll last forever. Now, the downside of quartzite is that it is one of the more expensive items, second only to our last type of countertop that I'm going to talk about shortly. But the nice thing about quartzite is that once you get it installed, it's going to last forever, and it's also going to give you that nice clean look. Now, the last type of countertops I'm going to cover are the classic luxury marble countertops. Now, marble, this is going to be the most expensive. It's also a softer stone, and it's a natural stone. So not only are you going to have to seal it and maintain it really well, but it's also, because it's soft, it's going to scratch, it's going to abrade, it might chip or crack pretty easily. So the nice thing about marble is that while it does have that classic marble luxury look, like many other luxury items, because it is more expensive, it's also going to require more maintenance and more upkeep. So now that we've covered hardware, light switches, outlet covers, cabinets, countertops, and vanities, let's talk about our final portion of the finished work of a house, and arguably one of my favorites, which is the flooring. Now, flooring, you can get it in all different types. So we're going to break this up into two major categories, which is vinyl or hardwood flooring, and then tile. So when it comes to flooring in general, if we're not talking about tile, we're just going to talk about general flooring right now. There are three major categories of flooring you're going to see. The first one is LVP, which is luxury vinyl plank. It's become very, very popular nowadays, mostly because it is a little bit less expensive to install, super easy to install. Most of it's click lock, and it's 100% waterproof. Great option for any rental properties you have or any really high wear or high traffic areas. Now, the downside to LVP is because it is cheap and because it is very brittle. If you drop something on it, you might chip it. And if you have to pull it up for whatever reason, like I had to do one time in one of my renovations, when you put it back down, there's a high likelihood that you're going to damage the click clock mechanism. So it's going to be really hard to get a nice clean look if you're going to reinstall the same LVP flooring. Now, the second type of flooring is laminate. Now, laminate and LVP, very similar, but laminate is actually going to be real wood fiber of some kind with a laminated top to make it waterproof or water resistant and a lot more scratch resistant. This is going to be a little bit harder to handle because it is more rigid because it's actual wood fiber, but it's going to give you a nice natural wood look, but for a lower price and also higher durability than real hardwood floors. Now, the last type of floor, like I just said, real hardwood. Real hardwood, again, this is one of those items that is a luxury. It is much more expensive to install. It's going to scratch and break a little bit more easily. But the benefit is that with hardwood floors, you can sand them and refinish them for years and years and years and years. So if you really take good care of your hardwood floors, they can last hundreds of years, but you just have to make sure that you're not eventually grinding away too much of that finish layer. Otherwise, you're going to have to replace some of your hardwood floors. So now we've covered flooring in general. Let's talk about one of my favorite flooring finishes, and you can also use this on the walls, which is tile. Now, tile is one of those things that seems like a super difficult item to install, and there is a little bit of finesse that goes into it. But if you walk into a house and there's tile floors or a tile backsplash, or particularly like in the showers or in the bathrooms, there's a really creative or clean looking tile pattern, that's going to scream luxury upgrade, which is what a lot of people like to see. And the nice thing is that installing tile doesn't have to be that expensive, particularly if you're looking on the clearance rack at your local hardware store. So let's break down the four major types of tile, where you'd want to use them, what their costs are, what the benefits and drawbacks are, and then we can get out of here for today. Now, to start with, let's talk about ceramic tile. Ceramic tile is going to be the cheapest option. It's going to be easier to cut. It's going to be a great option for any areas that are moist or wet because it does have a very high water resistance. Now, the downside of ceramic tile is that it does chip very easily. So ceramic tile is going to be great for shower walls or maybe a backsplash in your kitchen, but you probably don't want to use it on shower floors or floors in your kitchen in general, because if you drop anything on it, it's going to chip that tile and then you're going to have to redo all that tile. Now, the second type of tile we have is porcelain tile. Porcelain tile is nice because it's also very durable, very hard, has a very high moisture resistance, but it is a little bit more expensive than ceramic tile. So porcelain is going to be a great option for pretty much anywhere you want to use tile. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to cut because it is a little bit harder, but it's going to be a great option for shower walls, shower floors, floors in your kitchen, floors in your living room, wherever you really want to use it. Porcelain tile, always a great option. And it's very easily found in most major hardware stores. So our next type of tile is stone tile. And this is moving kind of into the more luxury end of finishes. But stone tile is going to give a really classic look. and is going to be a great option for any areas that have very high traffic. So because they are stone, whether they're engineered or a natural stone, it's going to be a very durable surface. It's not going to break very easily. It's not going to chip very easily. And depending on what type of tile you get, it's going to offer a really nice, clean, luxury look. Now, the downside of stone tile is that because it is stone, it's going to be more expensive. It's going to be harder to deal with, harder to cut, and harder to install. And there's going to be a little bit of maintenance that's involved with it because it is stone. So you're going to have to seal it and make sure that it's in good condition over the life of the stone. So the last type of tile, and I really only see this in kitchen backsplashes or maybe some accents in a shower, this is going to be glass tile. Now, glass tile is cool because it adds a kind of a nifty little touch. It's translucent. It's going to really brighten up a space, and it's going to add a unique look to a lot of your spaces, which is why I see it used a lot in accents in either a shower or on a kitchen backsplash. The downside is because it is glass, it's going to be easy to scratch. You're going to get fingerprints all over it, but it is going to be easier to clean. So that's a benefit there. In general, I would not recommend using glass tile on any flooring surfaces. You're just asking to get you hurt. So mostly I would keep glass tile just to backsplashes for a little pop of color or for an accent portion of your shower. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our 9-part series of our Home Systems Explained series. And this was the longest video of all because it's the most fun video of all. It really gets people excited when they walk into a house, right? It's the finish work. So I know there's a lot of material covered here. If you're looking to see just a general overview of all the other systems, please check out the description below or check out the videos in this playlist. If you're looking for a deep dive into each individual portion of this home systems, check out the individual deep dive videos also located in this playlist.